Thank you, and welcome back to the Patriots 300 Level Podcast. My name is Eric, and as you can see, I am riding solo this week as Kevin is feeling a little bit under the weather. And I'll also be riding solo next week as well, as he'll be out of town. Welcome back for our 61st episode this week, as I'll be recapping the Patriots' first win of the season over the New York Jets and previewing their upcoming game versus the Dallas Cowboys this upcoming Sunday. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pat's 300 Level Pod for up to the minute updates and commentary on news of the day, as well as at our website at pats300levelpod.com. So, Patriots, big milestone, got their first win of the season out of the way. Wasn't pretty. There was some ugliness to the game, but a win is a win, in my opinion. They were playing a divisional opponent in the New York Jets, who they have beaten 14 straight times, and they were without their starting quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. But it is important to get that win. We do see sometimes against divisional opponents, sometimes teams don't play their best. The Jets have beaten the Buffalo Bills twice in the last 2 years with Zach Wilson as their quarterback. So it's no gimme that they're going to just roll over them. And as we saw, the Jets have a really good defense. And even though the Patriots moved the ball at times, we saw that the defense, had trouble converting, which was issues at times last year too and the previous year. But I'll get into that in a little bit. So I think the first thing to talk about is just the defensive domination by the Patriots. They pretty much made Zach Wilson look like Zach Wilson, like they have their previous four matchups. And I don't want to take credit for this, but the Patriots did follow the keys to the game that I had for their defense, which was pressure Zach Wilson. They generated pressure on 61.5% of dropbacks, which is an absolutely insane number. It was the most pressure that they generated since 2018, which was the Super Bowl year with that really good defense where they held the Rams to only 3 points in the Super Bowl. But Christian Barmore was an absolute beast once again. 7 pressures on his own. Josh Uche with 5 pressures. Matthew Judon with 5 pressures, including 2 sacks, with one of them being the safety, which was actually a key turning point in the game as well, which that safety was on Zach Wilson, but Judon making that game go from a 3-point lead to a 5-point lead forced the Jets on their last drive to have to throw a Hail Mary instead of trying to get into field position to tie the game and bring it into overtime. Second key to the game that I had was take out the Jets running attack and force Zach Wilson to beat you. And they did just that. Jets have a really good backfield in Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall, but they held them to just 22 carries for 38 yards, 1.7 yards per carry. And Cook had 8 carries for 18 yards. Hall had 12 carries for 18 yards. And this is a defense that did give up over 100 yards to the Dolphins the week before. Dolphins, granted, this week did run for well over 200 yards. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But I think part of the reason last week defense gave up a lot of rushing yards against some not great running backs, we alluded to in our last podcast, was that try and shorten the game by allowing them to run it a little bit and not force their fast wide receivers to beat you. But this week we saw that they were able to really slow down the Jets running attack. They did lose 2 of their defensive tackles and nose tackles in Danny Aquale and Devon Godchaux. Quale is likely out for the year with a torn bicep. There is a chance he might return later, but it's not optimistic. Godchaux did miss the rest of the game after that injury, but he did return to practice today and is hopefully plays this week. If not, should be back in a couple weeks at least. But that was good to see that the Patriots were able to stop the Jets running attack, which with a really good backfield. And then the third key to the game that I had was take out Garrett Wilson. As I alluded to, Garrett Wilson is one of the better wide receivers in football. He might not be in the same echelon as the 4 top receivers they played in week 1 and 2 with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, and A.J. Brown, but he's right below that. And in the next year or so should probably elevate into that level. So they took him out for only five catches for 48 yards and tried to make anyone else beat them, and they weren't really able to. The next closest target was Allen Lazard with 3 catches for 37 yards. Even though Zach Wilson didn't play a good game, I know a lot of people are saying Wilson lost them the game, and that might be the case. But Wilson didn't turn the ball over, which he has in prior matchups. And another thing a lot of people are kind of leaving out in their discussions of this game was how good this Patriots defense really was. Not Zach Wilson didn't play great, but a lot of times he didn't really have anywhere to throw. The Patriots secondary was smothering the wide receivers, smothering the passing lanes. They slowed down the run, and since they slowed down the run, they're able to force the Jets to pass. Knowing they're going to pass, they're able to tee off on their pass rush, get after Zach Wilson pretty quickly, and just not really have him have anywhere to throw. Outside of that one drive where they did score the touchdown, which wasn't great, but again, the Patriots were up by 10 at that point, so it wasn't that it tied the game or had the Jets come back to win. But outside of that drive, that this defense was just unstoppable all day. Like I said, the pass rush was excellent. Secondary play was excellent. Pretty much the entire defense everywhere was excellent. Moving to offense, there were some inconsistencies, as I alluded to. They did have a positive running attack, which was good, which we didn't really see the first 2 weeks. Zeke had 16 carries for 80 yards, Mondre 19 carries for 59 yards. So they were able to run the ball, which was something that we alluded to, that they needed to run the ball to help open up the passing game and then open up some play action passes. And we actually did see that where they were running the ball in a 3 tight end set, 7 straight times, run it, run it, run it. Then they ran a play action, which allowed Pharaoh Brown to get wide open and run for a 70-yard touchdown or 59-yard touchdown. And then he had another catch where he was able to break a tackle and run for a first down too. So had some pretty good play from the tight end position, with Brown having over 70 receiving yards. Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki had some good catches. Mac overall was 15 of 29, 201 yards, 1 TD, no interceptions, no sacks. Wasn't excellent, but he did make some throws that, again, we haven't seen in prior years, where he threw a laser to, I believe it was Kendrick Bourne. He wasn't great in the deep passing. I believe they were 0-5 on deep targets. Granted, one was to Demario Douglas where he was interfered with, but they didn't throw the penalty. And there were a couple others where it looked like the receiver might have ran the wrong route. So I don't know if he can put it all on him, but in the intermediate game, he was good. In the short passing game, he was pretty good. So he didn't lose you the game. He didn't throw interceptions, didn't make any mistakes. And as Bill Belichick said in the post-game locker room, that one of the keys to the game for them was no turnovers. They didn't have any turnovers, and they won the game in part because of that. Another thing on the offense, part of the inconsistency, was not really a great day for the wide receivers. Kendrick Bourne only had 4 catches for 46 yards. He was your leading receiver. And then the next leading receiver was Devonta Parker with only 2 catches for 19 yards, Douglas 1 catch for 15 yards, and then Juju 1 catch for 5 yards. Juju overall didn't have a good day. Like I said, only that 1 catch. There were 2 deep routes where, granted, we don't know the play, but on review and watching it, it looked like he and Mac were off, that he ran the wrong route. It could be that Mac just didn't throw it right or misinterpreted what Juju was going to do, but it looked like he ran the wrong route. He did have that penalty for a blindside block. So through three games, he hasn't really performed like we were expecting. It might just be that it is a tough offense to get the grasp of, and he might be able to pick up the reins and as the year goes on. That's what I'm hoping for. But again, it remains to be seen based on giving up Jacoby Myers essentially for similar money, who is productive in this offense. Another thing regarding the offense was they moved the ball. They had success moving the ball, but they couldn't really execute late to really put the game away. They're able to move the ball, but they got stopped before field goal position, or for late field goals. And then the last 4 drives in the fourth quarter, they had a chance to score a touchdown to really put the game away, and they were unable to really do that. I believe they punted their last 6 drives on offense, which isn't good. They were playing, again, the Jets defense, you have to give them respect. They are one of the best defenses in football, and we saw that. So they are no cakewalk, especially this early in the season where the offense isn't really gelling yet and meshing. So hopefully that's something they're able to turn around hopefully soon. But again, it remains to be seen, but they did enough to win the game at least. It wasn't pretty again, but they did enough. So overall for 3 up, 3 down for this game, let's see. For number one, I have to go with Farrow. He had that really big touchdown. Again, a lot of people didn't even know who he was on the team, but he had a really big game. He was really good in the blocking game. He had those 2 catches for over 70 yards, and he played excellent. He gives them another option at that tight end position on top of Gesicki and Hunter Henry, who are more receiving tight ends. Farrow is more of a blocker, but again, did show you his production in the receiving game. And Bill O'Brien said after the game, once he was released by the Colts, he went up to him and then the tight end coach who was with Bill O'Brien in Houston, both went to Bill and said, we need to sign this guy. And he's worked out so far. Number two, I have to go with Christian Barmore. He was just an absolute monster throughout the game. Getting pressure up the middle, causing havoc, having 7 pressures for defensive tackle is insane. But he played really well. And then after Godchow and Aquale went down, he moved to the nose tackle position and again still held his own and played really well there. Number 3, I have to go with Christian Gonzalez. He was just an absolute animal. He was pretty much guarding Garrett Wilson almost all day, and he just didn't allow any separation at all. I believe when he was guarding Garrett Wilson, he only allowed 2 receptions. Depends on who you look at, how they grade it. Some said 2, some said 3, but regardless, for a receiver of that caliber, who's a team's number 1 option, to give up only 2 or 3 catches is really good. He pretty much smothered him all day. And it's really great to see how well Gonzalez has been playing, especially as a rookie these first 3 weeks. And if he's able to keep holding it up, this defense can really put things together as the season goes on. They're going to be getting Jack Jones back in a couple weeks when he comes back from injury, and having an outside cornerbacks of Christian Gonzalez and Jack Jones with Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones, and inside you have Miles Bryant, who's been playing really well. Sean Wade has been playing really well too. And this defense can win some games. We saw the Jets last year win 8 games with essentially Zach Wilson and Mike White as your quarterbacks. Patriots have a better offense, better quarterback position or quarterbacks than the Jets did. And I think this defense might be even better than the Jets was last year. So you're going to be in most games, and this defense is going to be the key contributor for it. Number 3, like I said, was Christian Gonzalez. And then I just have to give honorable mention to Jabril Peppers. He was all over the place, played really well. And this is something that I was talking with Kevin about after the game. I'm kind of worried by how well Jabril Peppers is playing because I feel that it might make Kyle Duggar expendable. Both are almost the same age. I think Peppers is only a few months older than Duggar, but I feel that they might see that they can pay Peppers less and move on from Duggar, and they still have Mapu, who they drafted this year. So that's something to keep an eye on, as Duggar doesn't have an extension yet. He's going to be a free agent this offseason. I hope it's not the case. I hope they keep all 3 so that they have a really good defense going forward, but we'll have to see. For down, I have to go number 1, Juju Smith-Schuster. As I alluded to, he didn't play great. Only had 1 catch. It looked like he ran some wrong routes, and he had that bad penalty. So not what you want to see from your number 1 wide receiver. Again, it's still early, so hopefully there's time where he can turn things around, but we'll have to wait and see. Number 2 is Joe Cardona. I'm a big fan of Cardona. I have a Cardona jersey. I really like him, but he had some high snaps, which may or may not have impacted Chad Ryland's field goal attempts, where on the 2 high snaps were the field goals that he missed. It was bad weather, so that might have contributed to the high snaps and also might have contributed to the missed field goals. But Again, you don't want to see that from your 9-year long snapper. But again, I still have faith in him, and we'll have to wait and see. And then my third down is just Devontae Parker. Again, he hasn't really played great so far, the 3 weeks into the season. He had, I think, 6 catches last week, but did allow that interception. And I believe part of the, granted, I don't know this, but my guess is part of the reason why they didn't go after DeAndre Hopkins this offseason was they felt more comfortable going with Devontae Parker, who both play similar roles. Again, hasn't played up to that expectation this year. It is still early, so hopefully once him and Matt get more onto the same page that they're able to turn things around. All right, so that pretty much concludes the recap of the Jets game. Just going to briefly go into some news around the NFL. I think the biggest news was the Dolphins dropping 70 on the Broncos, which is insane. They won 70-20. And I think part of this, it made me feel even better about the Patriots defense, where it wasn't perfect when they played the Dolphins in week 2, but they did allow only 7 points in the second half and 24 overall. And they held Tyreek and Jalen Waddle to only, I believe, 126 yards between the two of them on 9 catches. So they played really well, and seeing the Dolphins put up 70 the next week, just as a Patriots fan, it made me feel a little better, just seeing that this defense might be even better than we were expecting and anticipating. But again, Dolphins aren't perfect. We saw the Patriots could have beaten them. I know a lot of people are now saying Dolphins are the team to beat, but I think it's still a little too early on that. Bills won. They won easily. They're starting to turn. I know the Bills lost week 1, but they did have 4 turnovers in that game, and then had some pretty convincing wins the last 2 weeks. So it looks like they're starting to catch their stride. And then just the Chargers, they were 0-2, and they were up by 4 with, I believe, 1:40 to go. They had 4th and 1 at their 24-yard line. And then Brandon Staley, their coach, who I think is the worst coach in football, I think most people agree, decided to go for it and ran the ball, didn't convert, and then gave the ball back to the Vikings with only 20 yards to go to get a touchdown. The Vikings should have won, but they again choked in the big moment. So they really saved Staley and probably saved the Chargers the season. But that's why I'm not too concerned about the Chargers as a potential competitor for the Patriots fighting for a playoff position, just because Brandon Staley is Brandon Staley. Then I think the last news around the NFL, which is just not really new football news, but just Travis Kelce bringing Taylor Swift to the game and everything. It's getting reactions from everyone. Bill Belichick talked about it. Mac Jones talked about it. So just have to bring it up. But all right, that's it for news around the NFL. Before we dive into the upcoming matchup, just a quick trivia question. Just to add some more fun to the podcast, solo podcast. On this date, at least of recording, September 27th, in 2009, Tom Brady threw the 200th touchdown of his career versus the Atlanta Falcons. Who is the recipient of that touchdown catch? And the answer is, you guessed it, former Patriots tight end Chris Baker. All right. So this upcoming Sunday, the Patriots have a pretty tough task in facing the 2-1 Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys have a really great or really fast defense. Defense has been playing really well so far this season. They have some explosive players on offense. So it is a tough task. I think one of the X factors of the game, especially if Kevin was here, he would talk about this, is just Mike McCarthy as the head coach, I think is such an advantage for the Patriots. We saw it when the Patriots played the Cowboys in 2021, where McCarthy almost lost them the game. And he's done that throughout his career. He's not a good coach. He essentially coaches like he's playing Madden, or you could even say people coaching Madden for the X's and O's during the game does a better job than McCarthy does. So that should help the Patriots. I think the Patriots have a decisive advantage at the head coaching position. But the Cowboys do have a good defense. They're fourth overall in total yards allowed through 3 games this season, of only allowing 262 yards. Second in passing yards allowed of only 131 per game, which is insane. They have their fifth in pressure rate at 29.1% of dropbacks, which is tied with the Patriots for fifth. They're second with 12 sacks. They're second with 5 interceptions. So defense is fast. They're able to get a good pass rush. They're able to sack the quarterback and force turnovers. I think, and then for rushing yards, they're 25th in rushing yards allowed at 131 yards per game. And then they're third worst in yards per carry at 5.3. I think the stats are a little bit misleading for this defense, even though they have played well the first 2 games. They didn't play great against Josh Dobbs and the Cardinals, but if you look at the passing yards allowed and you see 131, you think, wow, this might be a historic defense. But if you look at the quarterbacks that they played Daniel Jones week 1 of the Giants, who myself and Kevin both think is not a good quarterback, even though he played well last year. They played Zach Wilson week 2. As Patriots fans, we saw what that was like this past week. And then they played Josh Dobbs week 3. So they haven't really played a real true quarterback yet. They do have the good pass rush, which does help them. But again, facing this is going to be by far the best offense that the Cowboys are facing this week. So it should be interesting. And even though their defensive stats might be a little misleading here or there, they are without Trevin Diggs, who tore his ACL, but they do have a good front seven with DeMarcus Lawrence at defensive end. They have Micah Parsons at edge or linebacker. They have Leighton Vander Esch, who's played really well at linebacker for them. They still have Stephon Gilmore at cornerback, who, as Patriots fans, we remember when he won Defensive Player of the Year back in 2019. Yeah, 2019. And he's still played well this year. I don't think he's as good as he was back then, but he's had some success on the outside, but struggled a little bit with some crossing routes. So that might be a way to go after them. And then they do have some strong safeties with Javon Curse. So it is a very talented defense, but there are ways to beat them. On offense, they have Dak Prescott, who some people think is a good quarterback, some don't. I think he's in the same mesh as Tony Romo, where he's a good fantasy quarterback. He'll put up numbers, put up stats, but if you need him to win you the game, he likely won't do that. Tony Pollard's a decent running back, but again, I don't think he's as good as Zeke was when they were there, and I think having Zeke as a tandem back made Tony Pollard better. Tony Pollard having to carry the load, I think, is an advantage for the Patriots. They do have some very talented wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Brandon Cooks. So it's not like the Jets where we saw last week, where Jets only had Garrett Wilson and no one else to beat them. The Cowboys do have some other receivers as well. So going into the keys to the game, or actually, let's take a step back. The Patriots played the Cowboys back in 2021, which was only 2 years ago. So that might give some silver linings into what this game might look like. That was also the 4th game of the year for the Patriots. They lost that game to drop to 1-3. The Patriots are 1-2 right now. So if they lose, they'll drop to 1-3 again. Or if they win, they move up to 2-2. In that game, Dak Prescott was 36 of 51 for 445 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He was pretty much moving the ball at will against the Patriots. Running game, Zeke had some success, but wasn't perfect. Tony Pollard, 10 carries for 40 yards. And then at wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb just absolutely destroyed the Patriots. 9 catches, 149 yards, 2 touchdowns. And I believe Jalen Mills was covering him for most of the game. He at least was on the touchdown pass to win the game for the Cowboys. I'm not sure if he was for the entirety of the game, but at least near the end he was, and CeeDee Lamb had success. I would expect possibly Gonzalez to cover him, but we'll have to wait and see. My guess is if Jonathan Jones is back, he'll shadow Brandon Cooks, just because Cook is very fast and Jonathan Jones is your fastest defensive back. So put Jonathan Jones on Cook and have him shadow him, and then either go with I would probably go with Gonzalez on CeeDee Lamb and maybe some safety help over the top. And then Michael Gallup, maybe Miles Bryant or Sean Wade, who has played well. In the 2021 game as well, Dalton Schultz had a pretty big game at tight end with 5 catches for 79 yards. He's no longer on the team. And their tight end this year is Jake Ferguson, who isn't as good as Dalton Schultz was. So I wouldn't expect it to be too big of an issue facing the tight end position. Ferguson has 10 catches for 70 yards and 1 touchdown in 3 games. Patriots do have some of the best safeties in football who are usually productive versus the tight end position with Peppers, Duggar, Adrian Phillips. So I think they'll be able to successfully take him out of the game. So it just depends on if they're able to really slow up this offense at the wide receiver position. So just going into the keys to the game for this week, I think it's similar to the keys are similar to what it was versus the Jets last week. On defense, I think the number one takeaway is to take out CeeDee Lamb. He's by far the Cowboys' number one option. If you're able to take out him, make someone else beat you. While the Cowboys do have a lot more threats than the Jets did, they do match up well. Like I just said, I think Jonathan Jones will be able to cover Brandon Cooks and take him out of the game. And then I think Miles Bryant or Sean Wade versus Michael Gallup, along with safety help over the top, should help slow down the Cowboys passing attack. Number 2 is slow down the run, force the Cowboys to become one-dimensional, take out Tony Pollard from the game, and then force the Cowboys to pass. If you force the Cowboys to be passing every single time, that's when you can pressure the quarterback, get after him, tee off on your pass rushes. And then you'll see some success from Judon, Uche, Barmore, Wise, and Keon White, like we saw last week. And then that kind of gets into my third point, which is continue to pressure the quarterback. Make Dak Prescott's life a living hell, force him to be on the run or stepping into hits, which will force some interceptions or turnovers. So I think that's what the defense is going to have to do. I think they're built for these type of games. They're very strong in all 3 levels. And I think they'll be able to slow down the Cowboys' offensive, both passing and rushing attack. For the keys to the game for offense, number 1, run, run, run. Cowboys have been allowing 131 yards per game, and they're allowing 5.3 yards per carry, which is 3rd worst in football. You have a really good backfield with Mondre and Zeke. So just keep attacking them, run, run, run. Pick up some chunk plays on first down. And then if you keep getting 4 or 5, 6 yards per carry, especially if you're running on first down, is setting up 2nd and short, 3rd and short, which is going to allow your offense to be more successful. Additionally, by running the ball, it's going to force the Cowboys pass rush to slow up and be more hesitating in their pass rush, which will allow the offensive passing attack to be more successful too. If you have to be worrying about the run, you're not really able to tee off on your pass rushes, because if you do, you're going to allow the runner to get by you and pick up some yards. So I think by far the number 1 key to the game is running the ball and running it successfully. Number 2 key is for the offensive line to hold up. As I've been alluding to, the Cowboys have a really good pass rush. So it's going to be important for Trent Brown to have another great week like he did last week, for whoever's playing right tackle, well, whether it's Calvin Anderson, Lowe, to really hold up and not allow them to get by him. Number 3 is attack the defense with intermediate crossing routes, slants, and in cuts. Pretty much that short to intermediate passing game. Once you get that going as well, if 3 steps and out, you're not going to let the pass rush really affect your rhythm or passing game. And by doing that, running the ball successfully and then having a quick and intermediate passing attack, that's going to then open up some potential plays for chunk plays later on in the game, for where you can get some big yards in a deep pass to Kendrick Bourne or to Douglas or to Booty or to Juju. So that's really the keys to the game for offense and defense for the Patriots to possibly have a successful week. As we go to prediction time, I think the Cowboys are a good team. Patriots really are going to have to play, not turn the ball over and be successful, not make many mistakes. I have the Patriots winning 31-20. I think that Mike McCarthy's not a good coach and he's going to make some screw ups at certain times in the game. I think the Patriots defense is just too good where they're not going to allow the Cowboys to throw for 450 yards like they did last time and run for 100 plus. I think they're going to be able to successfully slow down Tony Pollard and force Dak to pass. But I think this secondary mixed with this passing rush is really going to slow down the passing attack, and we're not going to see the Dak Prescott performance from 2 years ago. I think the offense is going to be more successful because they're going to be able to run it and run it successfully. And then that'll be able to pick up some yards, and they'll be playing with a better field position, better down and distance to go. So that's where my prediction is. Patriots 31-20. Should be a good week. Hopefully a fun game to watch. I know a lot of people picking the Cowboys based on how they performed the first 3 weeks. But again, I think they haven't really been playing some good teams. And then this will be their really first test. And they lost a very bad Cardinals team this past week too. So we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully I'm right and the Patriots end up winning and then bring their record back to 2-2 and back to 500, but we'll have to wait and see. Tune in next week as we'll be recapping this game and then previewing the upcoming game versus the Saints. So have a great rest of your week, and I'll be talking to you guys on Twitter as well as next week.